The morning sun filtered through the oaks lining Ridgewood Estates as I stepped onto my porch with a cup of black coffee and Jasper, my loyal golden retriever, at my heels. Retirement had its perks: peace, a slower rhythm, and finally, the time to cultivate roses without rushing to court. After 3 decades on the bench as Judge Harold Givens, I had traded criminal cases for compost, felons for flower beds. Or so I thought. A sharp knock disrupted the stillness. I turned to see a woman standing rigidly at the foot of my steps, her blazer pressed so tightly across her chest it might have cracked if she moved too fast. She held a clipboard with the reverence of a sword. Blonde bob, stiff smile, eyes like a hawk locked on prey. "Good morning," she said, voice tight. "Karen Whitmore. I'm president of the Ridgewood Estates HOA." She extended a business card like it was a badge of honor. I accepted it, but didn't return the gesture. "Judge Harold Givens," I said evenly. "How can I help you?" Karen's lips twitched at the word judge, but she recovered quickly. "Your shutters are in violation of new HOA aesthetic standards. Regulation 4.3, effective as of 2 days ago, mandates all homes must have trim and shutters painted in either soft clay or midnight blue. Yours are black." I raised an eyebrow. When was this rule passed? Emergency board meeting. Unanimous vote. Was notice provided to the homeowners? "No," she said, as if the question were absurd. "Board matters are board business. The rest of the community is notified afterward. Through citation." Jasper gave a low growl, sensing tension. I sipped my coffee, gaze steady. "And who sits on this board?" Karen's smile widened. "Currently, myself. Secretary, treasurer, and president. It's a small neighborhood, Judge. Someone has to keep order." A quiet laugh escaped me, sharp, short. "A one-woman tribunal. Impressive." Karen ignored the sarcasm. "You have 10 days to comply before a fine is issued. Consider this a courtesy call." She pivoted on her heel, her clipboard already scratching out notes as she strutted down the walk. Jasper barked once, loudly. I didn't shush him. I watched her disappear around the corner, a storm brewing behind my calm exterior. I hadn't left behind decades of order, law, and logic to be strong-armed by a bureaucratic petty tyrant with a fetish for beige siding and control. The citations arrived like clockwork. Excessive wind noise, decorative chimes, improper hose storage, festive dog leash. Each fine came with a stern warning about compliance. Jasper's leash, bright green with paw prints, was apparently a distraction from community uniformity. My wind chimes? Too melodic. My garden's tulips? Aggressively colored. Neighbors whispered, but no one challenged her. Most had families, jobs, too much on their plate to fight back. Some had simply folded, painting their homes dull to avoid confrontation. I started documenting everything: dates, times, her pacing in front of my house like a vulture doing laps. 9 times a day she walked by, each pass slower than the last. I installed cameras, concealed discreetly under the eaves. If Karen Whitmore wanted a battle of order and law, she'd get it with evidence. But it wasn't the citations that finally crossed the line. It was the smirk. The way she lingered outside my gate one evening, watching me weed the flower bed, smug as a cat eyeing a caged bird. "You know, Judge," she said, not bothering to hide the condescension, "you can resist all you like, but in this neighborhood, compliance isn't optional." I met her gaze, slow and level. "Neither is due process." She blinked, hesitated, just for a moment. Then the mask slid back on. I didn't say anything else. Just turned back to my roses. But something had shifted. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was inventing them. And her aim wasn't order. It was domination. Ridgewood Estates had a new tyrant, and she had declared war on her newest neighbor. She didn't know yet that I'd spent 3 decades sending bigger bullies packing, with nothing more than the law and a gavel. And now I was sharpening both. 3 days after Karen Whitmore's parting words about compliance, I awoke to the sound of Jasper barking like the world was ending. I threw on a robe and stepped outside just as the sun crested over the rooftops.
My stomach sank the moment I saw it.
Black paint slathered across my garage door. Sloppy, uneven strokes spelling out, "Rule breaker." For a moment, the world went quiet. Just the rustle of oak leaves, the click of Jasper's nails on concrete as he paced. Rage wasn't my first response. Not shock either. It was a steady, slow-burning clarity. A judge's clarity. That of a man who's seen desperation and delusion take many forms, and now had to deal with both in a cul-de-sac. I snapped photos from every angle, ensuring timestamp metadata. Then I checked the security feed. Karen. 5:43 a.m. hoodie, gloves, a can of paint. Not even trying to hide her face. Brazen as a burglar in broad daylight. She'd escalated. Petty fines and clipboard tyranny weren't enough. Now it was outright vandalism. I wasn't just a non-compliant neighbor in her eyes. I was a threat. And threats, in her world, were meant to be silenced. She picked the wrong man. I didn't call the police.
Not yet.
I wanted Karen to dig her own grave, inch by inch. I wanted a record, a timeline, a pattern. One act of vandalism might earn a slap on the wrist. A campaign of harassment? That was something else entirely. By noon, the rumor mill churned to life. I overheard snippets while pruning my roses. "Did you see Harold's garage? Karen says he did it himself, to make the board look bad. She said he's mentally unstable." She was poisoning the well. That was her play. If she could frame me as unstable or belligerent, her actions would seem like self-defense. So I cleaned the paint. Quietly. Without a word. No confrontation. No accusation. Instead, I went digging. Public HOA filings. Ridgewood's charter. Meeting minutes. Budgets.
Audits.
The more I read, the more rot I found. Karen hadn't been elected. She had assumed power after the previous board members resigned within weeks of each other. No special election. No transparency. Most damning of all, she'd been diverting HOA funds, small amounts, but enough to add up. Landscaping invoices that didn't match services rendered. Security upgrades that were never installed. All signed by her. She wasn't just a tyrant. She was a fraud. The next morning, I mailed anonymous letters to every homeowner. Inside, screenshots of Karen spray painting my garage, quotes from Ridgewood's bylaws proving her authority was self-appointed, and an annotated budget report with questionable transactions circled in red. By sunset, her empire was wobbling. Cars stopped in front of her house. Neighbors walked by whispering. Someone yanked the HOA president's sign from her lawn. I didn't have to speak a word. The truth did the shouting for me. That night, Karen showed up again. This time, no clipboard. No smirk. Just a face flushed with fury and desperation. "You think you're clever?" she hissed. "You're trying to turn this neighborhood against me?" "I didn't try," I replied. "You did that yourself. You have no idea what I'm capable of." She leaned in, inches from my face. Jasper tensed behind me. "And you have no idea who I am," I said quietly. "But you're about to learn." She opened her mouth, then hesitated. That same flicker from before.
Doubt.
Recognition. The realization that I wasn't like the others she'd bullied into silence. She stormed off without another word. I stood there on my porch long after she disappeared into the shadows. This wasn't just about a painted garage or power-drunk HOA rules. It was about justice. She had turned a peaceful community into a place of fear and quiet resentment. But not anymore. This time, the gavel would fall in the court of Ridgewood Estates. And I was already preparing the case. I never liked spectacle. Courtrooms taught me to value stillness, because it's often in the quiet where truth rises. But when the HOA held its quarterly community meeting in Ridgewood's tiny rec center, I knew silence wouldn't do. Not anymore. Karen arrived 20 minutes early, hair pulled into a severe bun, crisp white blazer buttoned to her throat. She walked like someone heading to war, shoulders tight, clipboard clutched like a shield. Only this time, no one rose when she entered. No one greeted her. Conversations continued around her like she was invisible. I waited until every seat was filled and the low murmur of discomfort settled over the room. Then I stepped to the front, notes in hand, Jasper at my side in his quiet, watchful way. Karen eyed me like she wanted to set the place on fire. "I know this isn't a court," I began, my voice even but firm. "But it is a forum. And when injustice takes root in a community, any community, it's every resident's responsibility to confront it." Several neighbors nodded. A few leaned forward. "I'm Harold Givens. Most of you know me as the new guy with the flower obsession. Some may know me by title, retired Superior Court Judge. I never intended to get involved in HOA politics. I moved here for peace. But that peace was violated." I turned toward the projection screen I had rolled in.
Click.
The first slide appeared, Karen on my security footage, hoodie pulled tight, spray can in hand, standing before my garage.
Gasps.
Whispered expletives. Karen shot to her feet. "This is defamation." "No," I replied calmly. "This is evidence."
Click.
The second slide, a budget ledger from 3 months ago. Landscaping expense, $1,200. Screenshot of my yard, unchanged from the week before. A local landscaping company's invoice. Never hired, never paid.
Click.
Another entry. Security camera upgrade, $2,400. Accompanied by a photo from the cul-de-sac. No new cameras. No installation record. Karen's hands trembled at her sides. "You see," I continued, "Karen didn't just bend the rules. She rewrote them. Without board approval. Without community input. She assumed power, punished dissent, and most recently, committed vandalism and theft under the guise of authority." A man in the second row raised his hand. "Why didn't we vote for these rules? Or the budget?" "We didn't," a woman answered before I could. "She told us it was too late, that the board had already decided." "She was the board," someone else muttered. Karen tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "You don't know the pressure I'm under. People here expect things to be kept in order. If I didn't take control, this place would fall apart." "No one elected you, Karen," I said, still calm. "No one empowered you to harass, deface, or defraud." Her eyes flashed. "You're a hypocrite. Acting all noble with your judge title, but you're manipulating people just like I supposedly did." I let her words hang there, then turned to the crowd. "I'm not here to be your new president. I'm not here to create more division. I'm here because I've seen this kind of behavior before, in courtrooms, in corrupt offices, in neighborhoods where fear kept people from speaking up." I looked at the youngest couple in the room, James and Lila, who had stopped planting flowers in their yard because Karen cited them for unauthorized landscaping. I looked at Mr. Klein, the veteran whose flag was taken down for visual inconsistency. And finally, I looked at Karen. "You may have forgotten who I am, Karen, but I haven't forgotten who you are now." The room fell still. Lila stood first. "I make a motion to remove Karen Whitmore as HOA president effective immediately, pending an independent audit." A chorus of seconded followed so quickly it drowned Karen's gasp. A vote was called. Every hand but hers rose. She sank into her seat, defeated, shaking. The clipboard slipped from her grasp and hit the floor with a quiet clack, the sound of authority crumbling. But I wasn't done. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with the county regarding the misappropriation of HOA funds," I said. "And I'll personally ensure Ridgewood receives the legal oversight it has sorely lacked." As the meeting adjourned, neighbors came forward, thanking me, sharing stories, offering to help clean up the mess Karen left behind. Justice wasn't loud. It didn't wear a badge or bark orders. Sometimes, it simply wore gardening gloves and waited for the right moment to speak. But there was still one final chapter to close. Because Karen had walked away, for now. And I wasn't done with her yet. Karen didn't leave Ridgewood quietly. The week after the vote, she walked the neighborhood like a ghost clinging to the ruins of her former kingdom. No more morning inspections. No more notes taped to mailboxes. Just cold stares from porch steps and the occasional slammed door. The silence spoke louder than words. But I knew that silence wouldn't last. One evening, Just as the sun began to melt into the horizon, I saw her again, hovering near my driveway, arms folded, lips tight. She stared at my freshly repainted garage, then at Jasper lounging calmly by the porch. I stepped outside. "You've made your point," she said, not quite a whisper, not quite a threat. "No," I replied, voice even. "Not yet." That night, I finalized the report for the district attorney's office. It wasn't personal. It was procedure, something Karen never respected. I included the surveillance footage, financial inconsistencies, and statements from multiple residents. When I dropped it off at the courthouse the next morning, I felt none of the glee she'd once displayed when issuing HOA fines. Only resolve. The wheels of justice don't always move quickly, but they do move. 2 weeks later, Karen received a summons at her door. The charges were straightforward: vandalism, criminal mischief, and embezzlement of HOA funds. The evidence was airtight. And while I didn't sit the bench anymore, my reputation still carried weight. The prosecutor didn't need convincing. They built the case meticulously, brick by brick, just the way I would have. The trial wasn't held in our town. It moved to the county seat to avoid conflict of interest. But the entire neighborhood followed every development like it was primetime television. A few even took a day off work to attend. I sat in the second row, hands folded in my lap, face unreadable. Karen's defense attorney tried every angle, claimed stress, community pressure, even suggested she'd been framed. But there was no escaping the footage, the fake invoices, the deposit slips traced to her personal account. Her bravado melted into panic on the stand.
She cried.
Blamed others. Pleaded for sympathy. It didn't work. The jury took less than 4 hours.
Guilty.
When the verdict was read, Karen's had dropped, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked small, human. But that didn't absolve what she'd done. Her sentence: 18 months probation, restitution of the misused funds, and mandatory community service. It wasn't prison time, but it was accountability. And for Ridgewood, it was closure. After the trial, I returned to a very different neighborhood. One where neighbors waved again. Where kids rode bikes without fear of being scolded for unauthorized chalk art. The flower beds bloomed again, flags flew, and the HOA, under new leadership, actually served its purpose, for the people. I thought that might be the end of it. But a few weeks later, as I stepped out to retrieve the mail, I saw something unexpected. Karen. She stood at the end of my driveway, dressed in an orange vest, a trash bag in one hand, a litter picker in the other. Her court-ordered community service had begun. For a moment, she didn't notice me. Then our eyes met. There was no fire in hers anymore. Just fatigue. Maybe even humility. "I'm not looking for forgiveness," she said. "I just want to get through this." "I'm not offering forgiveness," I answered. "But I'll give you space to make it right." She nodded, just once, then returned to picking up discarded soda cans along the curb. I walked back inside, Jasper trotting beside me. We passed the garage, the same one that had once been defaced with anger and ego, now freshly painted.
Calm.
Untouched. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's a slow, deliberate reckoning. A community reclaimed. A tyrant unmasked. A neighborhood learning to breathe again. I didn't win anything. I didn't need to. But Ridgewood did. And that was enough.